Hello everyone, Laura Walker, OracleReport.com. This recording is Saturn and Pluto, the makers of eras, January 2020. So I'm recording this now on April 19th, 2020, as so many things are happening in the world, to enable us to step back and take a better view and get a bigger picture, because what is happening now is the end of an era and the beginning of an era on January 12th, 2020. So we're going to be looking at what's happening now and what that's foreshadowing by looking back and reverse engineering these cycles. Okay, so a cycle is the amount of time it takes for two planets to come back around into conjunction or meet up again. It takes Saturn and Pluto 33 to 38 years to complete their cycle, to come back around again and meet up, because Pluto has an elliptical orbit, so it's not an exact, it's not the one number. And Saturn rules structure, Pluto rules transformation, and the two in combination produce ground shifts. And Saturn and Pluto together are a dynamic of masculine power and control. It is a very forceful masculine energy. And this cycle is used, I believe, to time events in the world by world controllers, dark magicians, the minions of the archons, specifically the Jesuits. This is Jesuit level decoding that we're doing. But it is the nature of the two planets, as I said, to produce ground shifts, the turning of eras. It's a marking point in time to change society via the electromagnetics of astrology. A playbook, if you will, a code, a timing of events. Astrology is actually all about electromagnetic frequencies that repeat in predictable patterns and have specific effects on the electromagnetic frequencies of our body, the fields of our body. So this is a prime tool that can be used to forward an agenda, an agenda of control. It's an electromagnetic process of control that happens to our bodies, um, whether we like it or not, unless we are taking steps to mitigate that. Now, each energetic of astrology, meaning each of the 360 degrees of the zodiac, carries higher and lower octaves, like signals. The New World Order pushes the lower octave level, and a higher octave always occurs in response. It, it's a process of signal entrainment also, to where you can imprint the energy, or you can take steps or take action under a certain electromagnetic influence that will imprint into the collective consciousness whatever you're desiring, and you can do it over and over and over again at the predicted pattern. And that you therefore, in the magician's world, that they believe that that gives it more power, because they're imprinting on an old ritual. These are all rituals. So the more they do it at a certain electromagnetic frequency, the stronger it is. So the signal is stronger, we would say. So let me lay it out and let's assess. We're going to look at the last three cycles, the last three times Saturn and Pluto have come together, like they will on January 12th, 2020, because that's where we're building to now. It's not a hard stop and start. Okay, it's energy moves in waves for it. The signal fades out eventually. Um, Astrology, if you can think about this, astrology is like a square dance between planets. It's the partners touch, they begin the dance, and then they move around and they dance with other partners, and That energetic that they started with continues until they come back together again in that dance. So the dances or the cycles or the time periods that we're going to look at are 1914 to 1947, 1947 to 1982, 1982 to 2020. So we are in the year before the next cycle. The next cycle begins January 12th, 2020. 2019 is the last year before that happens. So we are going to look at the same points in past cycles. So we're going to look at the last year before the new cycle. So because that's the setup for what the new cycle is going to be about. So we're going to take a look at the last year before each of these new cycles to see if and how they set up the new cycle and the new era that Saturn and Pluto in conjunction ushers in. We're going to look for the themes. So I've researched events and have made lists. And you may or you may not be surprised to learn that researching the past is not as easy as it used to be because history is being buried and deleted from digital record and changed. And in a lot of cases, you have to pay if you really pay, it's different websites or different newspaper sites that it's really hard to get an accurate picture of the past. And to give you an example, I've gone mainly on Wikipedia entries with some delving into Google searches to some degree, just so that I could try and capture as much as I could. I went as far as I could without really having to pay to get more records, right? So one Wikipedia entry I was looking at involved Michael Jackson, and when I went back to double check, because I was checking the name, it was about a victim who had come forward in the past. The reference was gone. It wasn't there anymore. So we will do our best. So I'm going to capture as much of the history as of April 19th, 2019 that we have, and we're going to reverse engineer what they've been up to and what that might tell us about our current situation and our future situation. All right, so the first cycle that we're going to look at was 1914 to 1947. Now, this cycle started off with Saturn and Pluto in conjunction on October 4th, 1914 at 3 degrees of Cancer, which is the Sabian symbol. If you're new to the Oracle report, the Sabian symbols are images for each of the 360 degrees of the zodiac. And they give us the nature of that energetic, of what that tuning of that frequency does and what it's about, the themes of it and what it can produce, what's able to be manifest from it more readily. 3 degrees of Cancer is an Arctic explorer leads a reindeer through icy canyons. It's about facing difficult times and hardship, rough terrain. I think we could add in there an Arctic and an Antarctic explorer, truly. So we're looking at this cycle that began then in 1914 and ended in 1947, August 10th, 1947. So I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to look at the year before first. I'm going to read off the events from the year before and then the year of, because we're in the year before now. So we'll see how the year before looked, and then as that year of the actual conjunction, we'll see how that carried it forward. So I'm not cherry picking the data here either. I just listed it all and see what patterns emerge, because it's why do it otherwise? It's no fun. I'm not interested in proving my hypothesis. I'm interested in seeing if there's anything useful. All right. In January 1913, Stalin published his first article. In February, the 16th Amendment was ratified to the Constitution of the United States This imposed the collection of income taxes on all sources of income. Also that month, the 13th Dalai Lama declared Tibet independent from China. In March 1913, the House of Romanov celebrated its 300th year on the throne. It was the first women's suffrage parade in Washington, D.C. Also in March, Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated. The Department of Commerce and the Department of Labor were established. There was a flood in Dayton, Ohio, killed 360 people, 20,000 were displaced. In April 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation was chartered. In October, the first assembly line was used for Ford Motor Corporation to manufacture automobiles. And on December 23rd, 1913, the Federal Reserve was created. Also that year, stainless steel was invented. 1914, the year of the conjunction, in October. In January, Ford Motor Corporation announced the 8-hour workday with a $5 daily wage. February, the first stone of the Lincoln Memorial was put into place, and the music industry adopted copyrights. In March, there was the first scientific study of Easter Island. April, the first woman in the history of the British Empire reached the rank of major, Margaret MacDonald. She was a registered nurse. Also in April, the first International Criminal Police Conference was held. In May, Mother's Day was proclaimed by Woodrow Wilson. June, Wilson's envoy, Edward Mandrell House, we know him, meets with Kaiser Wilhelm. There was the Turkish massacre of Ottoman Greeks, and also in June, the assassination of Rasputin fails. In July, the Royal Naval Air Service, the forerunner of the Royal Air Force, was established. And an anarchist bomb intended to kill John D. Rockefeller prematurely exploded. Also, the Russian minister to Serbia dies suddenly while visiting the Austrian minister. And of course, the main one, the one I skipped, also in June, the assassination of Austrian Archduke Franz Ferdinand and Duchess Sophie, assassinated by a Serbian nationalist, the catalyst for the First World War. In July also, the U.S. produced or launched its first super dreadnought battleship, the USS Nevada. In August, the German Empire declared war on the Russian Empire. United Kingdom declared war on Germany, and the first electric traffic light went into operation in Cleveland, Ohio. The first one, no, I doubt it. September 26th, the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, was established. On November 16th, the Federal Reserve Bank of the United States officially opened for business. And on December 12th, the New York Stock Exchange reopened after being closed since August 1st. The drug oxymorphone was first developed in Germany also. Okay, next cycle. The next cycle began on August 10th, 1947, and it ran until November 7th, 1982. The conjunction was at the degree of 14 Leo. Cherub-like, a human soul whispers seeking manifestation. A cherub-like, a human soul whispers seeking manifestation. All right, we know this was the beginning of a significant era, wasn't it, at that time? Let's go back. Let's go back to the year before, 1946. In January was the first, January 10th, the first UN meeting, the first meeting of the United Nations, which was in London. It was held in London. Also on that day, Project Diana was activated. This was bouncing radar waves off of the moon, and it's considered the effective opening of the space age. January 17th, the United Nations Security Council had its first meeting. January 23rd, Yugoslavia is divided into 6 republics. This is Bosnia and Serbia area. April, there was an earthquake in Alaska, an 8.6 with tsunami that reached Hawaii. 173 people died. Also in April, Syria's independence from France is recognized. In May, the first V2 rocket was launched at White Sands. June 2nd, Italians vote Italy from a monarchy to a republic. It was the first time women voted. June 25th, the World Bank begins. August 1st, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission was established. There was an earthquake on August 4th in the Dominican Republic. 100 people died, 20,000 were left homeless. November 4th, UNESCO was established. December 11th, UNICEF was established. January 20th, an earthquake in Japan with a tsunami. Over 1,000 people were killed. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, 1946, President Truman officially ends World War II. That was the year before. 1947, the year of the conjunction. In May, the Truman Doctrine is signed, effectively beginning the Cold War. In June, the Doomsday Clock was introduced. July 8th was Roswell. September 18th, the National Security Act of 1947, which established the United States Air Force, the National Security Council, and the CIA. October 1st, the first recorded use of the word computer. October 30th, GATT was instituted. This is the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades. November 13th, the Soviet Union completes development of the AK-47. So this was the boom time, the baby boom, and the cherub-like, the baby angels, the human soul whispers seeking manifestation. So we had the Cold War, the UN, the World Bank, UNICEF, all of this, the space race. This was boom time, steel. Steel is king. And in general, a time of growth, we would say, yes. All right, the third cycle, and the cycle that we're in now, the one that we are in until January 12th, 2020. So we're now in the in-between time. We're in the, what we would, in astrology, we would say it's the balsamic of the cycle, the end of the cycle, which is kind of like the end of the old and the beginning of the new. It's like a in-between time where you have both energetics in effect, basically. One is waning and one is beginning. The Sabian symbol for this cycle, the conjunction, occurred on November 7th, 1982, at 28 Libra. A man in deep gloom, angels come to his help. Okay, looking at 1981. And we have a lot more data here because, more people, more things happening, more control happening. Okay, starting out in January 15th, Solidarity, we're going to be taking this trip back here, guys. Solidarity leader Lech Walesa meets with John Paul II, Pope John Paul II, at the Vatican. On January 19th, Iran agrees to release the 52 U.S. hostages. If you remember that, they had been held for 14 months. On January 21st, the first DeLorean stainless steel sports car rolls off the production line. March 17th, P2, Propaganda 2 Lodge, is discovered and then outlawed later. March 19th, 3 workers are killed during a test of the Space Shuttle Columbia. March 30th, President Reagan is shot, and this is when Poppy, H.W. Bush, comes in full force. May 6th, the design for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is chosen. March 11th, Bob Marley dies at age 36. March 13th, Pope John Paul II is shot. May 21st. Those were May. I can't remember if I said May. May for the Vietnam Veterans Award, Bob Marley, and the Pope being shot. Also, the first socialist president is elected in France. That was Francois Mitterrand. May 25th, the Gulf Cooperative Council is established between Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates. June 5th, the CDC has its first recognized cases of AIDS. June 13th, a man shoots 6 blank shots at Queen Elizabeth. June 18th, Lockheed's Nighthawk stealth fighter is first flown. It's Area 51 at Groom Lake in Nevada. June 27th, Stevie Wonder is given an emulator. It's a sampler keyboard with a floppy disk named 001, the first one. Remember those floppy disks? July 7th, the first woman is nominated to the Supreme Court. That was Sandra Day O'Connor. July 9th, Donkey Kong was released. July 29th, Prince Charles and Diana wed. August 1st, MTV was launched, first 24-hour video channel. August 12th, the first original IBM PC, personal computers, released in the US. It cost $1,565 in 1981. August 19th, the Gulf of Sidra event. Libya sends jets to intercept 2 Navy fighters, U.S. Navy fighters. August 31st, the Ramstein Air Force Base bombing in West Germany. September 27th through the 29th, the Iran-Iraq War. October 6th, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat is assassinated. Hosni Mubarak was elected president of Egypt after that. November 23rd, the Iran-Contra affair. Reagan signs top secret national security directive authorizing the CIA to recruit and support Contra rebels in Nicaragua. December 15th, a car bomb destroys the Iraqi embassy in Beirut, Lebanon. Syrian intelligence is blamed. December 28th, the first test tube baby was born in Norfolk, Virginia, my hometown area, Norfolk, Virginia Beach. And the use of crack cocaine is first reported in the U.S. and the Caribbean. Now, 1982, the year of the conjunction. January 1st, new ITV franchises are launched in the UK. On the 7th, the Commodore 64 8-bit home computer is launched. January 8th, AT&T agrees to break up and divest of its 22 subdivisions. January 13th, a plane crashes into Washington, D.C.'s 14th Street Bridge and falls into the Potomac. On that same day, a metro train derailed. January 26th, UK unemployment reaches a post-war record. January 30th, the first computer virus called the Elk Cloner was released. It was developed by a 15-year-old targeting Apple II computers. February 3rd, the Syrian army is ordered by the president to purge the Muslim Brotherhood. February 19th, the DeLorean Motor Corporation is put into receivership. February 28th, Adobe Systems is founded. March 10th, the U.S. embargo on Libyan oil imports begins. March 26th, groundbreaking ceremony of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. April 2nd, the Falkland War begins. The United Kingdom and Argentina. Yeah, what was all that about? I suspect Antarctica. On April 17th, the Canadian Constitution declares its independence from Britain. May 2nd, the Weather Channel airs for the first time. May 5th, 5/5, a Unabomber bomb. Remember the Unabomber? Unabomber bomb explodes in the computer science department at Vanderbilt. May 12th, a Spanish priest tries to stab Pope John Paul II with a bayonet. May 28th, Pope John Paul II visits the United Kingdom. It's the first visit by a reigning pope. 6/6, June 6th, the Lebanon War begins. June 8th, Reagan is the first American president to address a joint session of the British Parliament. June 11th, E.T., the movie, is released. June 13th, King Fayed becomes king of Saudi Arabia after the death of his brother. June 21st, Prince William is born. They say Prince William is born. July 9th, an intruder breached security at Buckingham Palace and made it all the way to the Queen's bedroom. July 17th, the first compact discs are produced in Germany. September 1st, United States Air Force Space Command is founded. Where have we heard that? September 19th, the first emoticons are posted. September 21st, the first United Nations International Day of Peace. September 29th, the Chicago Tylenol murders that took place over a few days there, where was cyanide laced in Tylenol Tylenol capsules, and 7 people died. October 1st, Helmut Kohl replaces Helmut Schmidt as Chancellor of Germany through a vote of no confidence. Also, October 1st, Epcot Center opened at Disney in Orlando. And also on October 1st, Sony launched its first CD player. October 19th, John DeLorean, again, arrested for selling cocaine, trying to sell cocaine to the FBI. He was found not guilty later. November 2nd, Channel 4 in the UK launched. November 3rd, the Dow Jones Industrial Average was up 43 points to close at 1,065.49, a 9-year high. Gosh. November 7th, the Thames Barrier was publicly demonstrated. You can look that up I'm not going to go into that more. What that was about. November 10th, Leonid Brezhnev dies, and former KGB head Yuri Andropov becomes Secretary General. November 13th, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is dedicated. On the 14th, Poland's Solidarity leader Lech Walesa is released from 11 months imprisonment near the Soviet border. November 30th, Michael Jackson releases Thriller, at the biggest selling album of all time at that time. December 2nd, a retired dentist becomes the first person to receive a permanent artificial heart. December 4th, the People's Republic of China adopts its current constitution. Constitution. December 7th, the first U.S. execution by lethal injection. It was in Texas. And on December 26, 1982, Time Magazine's Man of the Year is given for the first time to a non-human, the computer. All right, so what do we have here? These are the themes I've identified. Some of these overlap. I'm going to go through them and let's see what else you all see. The first theme, obviously war. The first cycle in 1914, World War I, the Turkish massacre of the Ottomans, and then the dreadnought battleship in the U.S., the first super dreadnought. The second cycle, 1947, that was the beginning of the Cold War, and that the AK-47 weapon, the development was completed. And then in the third cycle, current cycle, we have Iran agreeing to release the hostages, the Ramstein Air Force Base, the Iran-Iraq War, and the Iran-Contra. So we have also within this some secret dealings coming out. The Israel-Lebanon War, and then of course the UN twisted around with Day of Peace. All right, so that's clearly, it's just been endless wars, hasn't it? World War One, Two, Korea, Vietnam, all everything in the Middle East. It's been continuous war. And where are we now? Where are we now? That's what we're looking at. Okay, clearly there's a theme of assassination and change of leadership. We had Archduke Ferdinand. We had the attempted assassination of Rasputin. That bomb intended for Rockefeller, and the envoy, the Russian minister to Serbia, being assassinated, and the Romanovs celebrating their 300th anniversary, and then in 1917 they were assassinated. In the 81 cycle, the current cycle, we have, of course, the attempted assassination of Reagan, Anwar Sadat. We have that car bomb in the Iraqi embassy in Beirut where Syrian intel was blamed. We have the Pope being shot. We have man firing blanks at Queen Elizabeth. We have the Unabomber, the attempted assassination by that priest of the Pope, the change in leadership in Saudi Arabia, of course, that man breaching Buckingham security and getting almost all the way to the Queen, the helmet change, Helmut Kohl replaced Helmut Schmidt, that replacement there. Brezhnev dies and Dropov takes over. Where are we at? Where are we at now? What is the potential there? Obviously, a theme of republics and independence or constitutions versus socialism or Marxism, communism. What the isms? We had Stalin publishing his first article. The Dalai Lama declared Tibet independent in the first cycle. In the second one, Syria became independent from France. Italy went to a republic. Yugoslavia broke into their different areas, of course, still under Soviet control. And the Truman Doctrine, right, about the Cold War. And then in the third cycle, the socialist president, Mitterrand, Brezhnev dies. The Canadian Constitution, which, remember, there's the Constitution of Canada as independent from Britain, but the Prime Minister of Canada always takes oath of allegiance to the Queen as a member of the Privy Council. And this is just came out about Trudeau, and also back in this cycle, the People's Republic of China adopting a constitution, as they call it. And we have what's happening in Venezuela now. All right, so clearly the New World Order agenda and infrastructure was advanced. Of course, beginning in the first cycle in 1913, 16th Amendment, Wilson, Rockefeller Foundation, Federal Reserve, the Fed opens up for business, and then we get to 1946, 47, we have the first UN meeting. They've advanced from the banking system. They're now into globalism, and the UN Security Council meeting, the World Bank, UNESCO, UNICEF, NSA, the space race, all that with that there was still a New World Order agenda and infrastructure, the CIA. And we could also talk about the transhumanism agenda and infrastructure with AIDS and the OxyContin, the opioids, the methadone. I'm sorry, um, methamphetamines. Look where we are with that now. Now, telecoms. We didn't really have anything in the first category with telecoms. This is really before that was really obviously getting going, right? Um, in '81, though, we saw a big advancement. MTV, this is all cable and all of those channels in the UK being launched. AT&T agreeing to break up, monopoly there. And now, we see now, we just have, giant mergers and monopolies, just a handful of media outlets and corporations owning everything. We have 5G and whatever's going on with Trump and the internet and the UN, whatever is happening there. Next category is alien space and technology. In the first cycle, the 1914, we had, remember, the Royal Air Service, and then the tech of the electric traffic light, the revival of tech, I should say. And then in 46, all of the space stuff, the second cycle with 46 and 47, that Project Diana, the V2 rocket, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission established, because that's what this is all the category that goes under. The first documented MIB encounter. I don't know if I mentioned that one there. I might have skipped over that when I was reading it. Roswell, the National Security Act, CIA, all of that. In the third cycle, we had the three workers killed in that space shuttle test of Columbia, which could have been a sacrifice. The stealth fighter, remember at Area 51, the movie E.T.'s release, and then Space Command founded and Epcot Center, Futurism, opened. Where are we now? We have the D-Wave computer, we have SpaceX, right? AI is what we're talking about. What else is, where are we now? Where has it progressed now? What do you think? What else is there now? And clearly computers. In the second cycle, the first recorded use of the word computer. And then in the current cycle, um, the Donkey Kong, being released, and then the IBM PC and the Commodore 64 and the computer virus, and then Adobe and the first emoticons, and the man of the year is the computer. Where are we at 2019? The robots. All right, royalty. Again, just recapping this specifically. The first cycle, we had Romanov with the 300th anniversary and Franz Ferdinand and the Duchess Sophie assassinated. In the second cycle, Italy went from monarchy to republic. Third cycle, Charles and Diana wed. King Fahd became king of Saudi Arabia. Prince William is born, and now we have Prince Harry's child imminent. And what is going on with royalty? What is going on over there? The category of life itself, life. In the first cycle, Mother's Day was proclaimed, remember? In the second cycle, we have the doomsday clock introduced, end of life, right? The doom. Third cycle with life, we have the first test tube baby, the first dentist becoming the first person to get the first permanent artificial heart, and then life or death, that execution by lethal injection. In 2019, we have the first three-parent baby. Memorials clear in the first cycle, the first stone of the Lincoln Memorial put into place, and the current cycle, that's the Vietnam Veterans Memorial dedication. firsts for women, this category. In the first cycle, we had the first suffragist parade in D.C., and that was the first large organized political march on Washington, D.C. It was the day before Woodrow Wilson was inaugurated, also. And then the first woman in the British Empire to reach the rank of major. The second cycle, again, was the first time women voted in Italy. And in the third cycle, the first woman is nominated to the Supreme Court, Sandra Day O'Connor. Where are we going with that one? First for women. President? All right, there's a theme in here of the music industry and black musicians. In the first cycle, the copyrights were introduced into the music industry. In the current cycle, we have Bob Marley died at age 36, Stevie Wonder given that first sampler keyboard, the first CDs, Sony launched the first CD player, Michael Jackson releases Thriller, the most all-time selling record then. We have now the documentary about Michael Jackson and the sexual abuse, and Nipsey Hussle, black musicians and the music industry. How are they used? Cycle I'd mentioned about drugs, and the theme I mentioned about drugs. 1914, 1913-14 time, the oxymorphone first developed. And the second cycle, or the current cycle, we have first use of cocaine, the Tylenol murders, and John DeLorean arrested for selling cocaine to the FBI. Am I the only one feeling like there's just a repeat here going of Elon Musk and John DeLorean? But that's really about, I think, stainless steel. This is a theme. 1913, it's invented, and then in 81, the first stainless steel sports car, and now we have SpaceX stainless steel rocket with Elon Musk. Last theme is labor and trade. Within the first cycle, we had the 16th Amendment ratified, which collected income. We had the Departments of Commerce and Labor established, the first assembly line with Ford Motor Corp, the Federal Reserve, the 8-hour workday at Ford, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Fed opening. In the second cycle, we had GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, initiated. And then in the third cycle, we had all of that, the Polish Solidarity Party, the labor activism. We had the Gulf Cooperative Council, UK unemployment reaching a post-war record, embargo on the Libyan oil. The Dow Jones had its 9-year high. So those were lots of themes with labor and trade. Where are we now? What's repeating? What themes are repeating, I guess, is the better way to put that. All right, so one of the things that I've done is to break the current cycle into its 4 cardinal parts, we would say. And what that means is the 4 times during this cycle that Saturn and Pluto were either conjunct, in square, in opposition, or again in square. Okay, so I've broken it down into the 4 quarters basically of the cycle to see the micro progressions within the larger cycle. So we can look at the conjunction, the time of the conjunction to the first square. What was happening at those times of shift? Okay, because it's going to, within the cycle of the era, when we have these quarter turns within the cycle, basically, that's when we'll have the micro shifts. So the reason for doing this is to track more in a more detailed way how the cycle has progressed. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I've broken it down into those four times. Okay, again, we had the conjunction of Saturn and Pluto in 82. And this is, we could really call the New World Order coup. I think, we could definitely call Kennedy's assassination the time of takeover, but the real grip was established when Reagan was shot and Bush basically took over. We had the Cold War, the Falklands War. Remember at this time in '82, if you're around then, this is when the self-help stuff really started happening with New Age, right? With all these alternative revival of like spiritualism, basically. This first cycle, this first quarter of the cycle ran from November 7th, 1982 to March 19th, 1983. Okay, so in that time between 82 and 93, again, was Cold War, assassinations, or attempted assassinations. We had Desert Storm, we had the all that happening over in the Soviet Union, right? So this is like socialism and all this. This is and communism. Big push, if you remember back then. It was just a lot of rhetoric that was happening then. Okay, the second turn here. Okay, the second quarter, as I said, came in on March 19th, 1993, and that ran all the way until 2002. The Sabian symbols involved with this turn, this second quarter here, when Saturn and Pluto are in square. Saturn was discharging 26 Aquarius, which is a mechanic testing a car's battery with a hydrometer. Testing and tech advances, right? And Pluto was at 26 Scorpio, Indians making camp in new territory. New territory. All right, 1993 to 2002. This was the Clinton era, the socialist lock on government structure, right? The branching out of senior executive service for sure. The computers with the internet, basically. World Trade Center 1 and then 2 at the very end of the cycle. The Waco siege, we had Bombay bombings, the hantavirus, remember this? The hantavirus, and there was also TB was labeled a global emergency by the WHO. That year in July, this is that reference about Michael Jackson that I went to look to double check. One of his victims came forward and there was a settlement. And Israel and the Vatican established diplomatic relations, and NAFTA was signed into law in 93. All right, the third quarter began on May 25th, 2002, and it went until November 15th, 2009. All right, so let's take it back to 2002. We have Bush 2, right? We have Patriot Act, surveillance. The Sabian symbols for those planets. Saturn is at 17 Gemini. The head of a robust youth changes into that of a mature thinker. It's like a sober new world, right? Sobering up. Certainly sober after 9/11. It's been sober for a long time, hasn't it? Pluto was at 17 Sagittarius and Easter sunrise service. Dawn. New World Order. The New World Order. 9/11 ushered in the New World Order and of completely taking over with surveillance state. In 2002, the Open Skies Mutual Surveillance Treaty was signed. Everybody spies on everybody. The Euro was introduced. It was the Queen's Jubilee. There was mapping of Mars. Remember that? We can laugh. Um, in May, um, Putin and Bush met for the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty. On that date, the exact date of the, I guess that would be the opposition there, when Pluto and Saturn went into opposition, May 25th, 2002, a Boeing 747 flight, a China Airlines flight crashed. Flight 611 crashed. 611 crashed, killing 225 people. And then in November, the Homeland Security Act was signed. All right, so we're in the fourth quarter, and we're very into the fourth quarter of this cycle that began on November 15th, 2009, and this is the one that we're in until January 12th, 2020. The Sabian symbols, Saturn was at 2 Libra, which is the light of the sixth race, transmuted to the seventh. 6 and 7 are 13. This is a transfer, the continuation of lineage, and I would say in this case the continuation of socialism. We have Obama now, right? This is where we have the fall and the decline of the republic, I would say. Pluto was at 2 Capricorn, 3 stained glass windows in a Gothic church, 1 damaged by war. So 2009 until now. What have we seen? The light of the sixth race transmuted to the seventh, the lower octave of this being a transfer of power within a socialistic line. 3 stained glass windows in a Gothic church, 1 damaged by war. The Gothic church. All right. This is where I'm really interested to see what you guys, the Parliament of Wise Owls, think and take it. In 2020, okay, the energetic that is building, the Saturn-Pluto conjunction on January 12th, that we're building to, that Sabian symbol is 23 of Capricorn, 23 degrees Capricorn, a soldier receiving 2 awards for bravery in combat. Okay. Now, the fix here, okay, to me, the answer to what we're in now, or the cycle that we're in now, is, remember, this started with the cycle that we're in now. It started with a man in deep gloom, angels come to his help. The answer is in the Sabian symbol that started this cycle in 1982. The answer is in that Sabian symbol, a man in deep gloom, angels come to his help. The answer is to request help from a higher power, or the creator, or the Christed, however you perceive and interpret and believe. Request help from a higher power, but it's also about requesting help from the higher you, your higher self. And as my mother, who's the wisest owl, reminds me, this is what the kahunas of Hawaii discuss. I was lucky enough to grow up, so for as long as I can remember, I was sitting around the kitchen table listening to my mother and family and my grandmother talking about things like the Huna religion in Hawaii and various other esoteric subjects forever and ever. But this is about talking to your higher self, and basically we change in this way from powerless victims, and we aren't gamed or played anymore because we take the problem to a higher level and override the system. So we discuss with our higher self, hey, this is out of control. This situation needs to be rectified. We require assistance. We need help. And then what happens is our higher self goes to the collective subconscious basically to talk to the higher self of the various people involved in producing all of everything that I've been talking about. For they have like a little talk, you might say. And so while we are, feeling at the mercy of or powerless to events or to this astrology, we are not, because remember there's a higher octave in play. Now, we have Saturn and Pluto going retrograde this month in April. Pluto is going to retrograde on April 25th and will remain retrograde until October 2nd, just a few days after the new moon in Libra, which is the middle part of the year. The major October surprises happen during that time of the year, the full phase of the year. Saturn's going to station retrograde on April 30th and remain until September 17th. And it's going to be in tight conjunction when it goes direct with the South Node. It's there now, remaining. So we are going from the energetics of Pluto at a woman entering a convent when it goes retrograde, and Saturn at a relay race. This is breaking things down into smaller parts. Woman entering a convent is the step back to reassess. When the planets go retrograde, Pluto will be at a relay race where Saturn is now, breaking things down into smaller parts. And Saturn will be at an ancient bas relief carved in granite remains, a witness to a long forgotten culture. What culture might that be? This era is about standing up. This retrograde is going to produce, with Pluto, transformation from isolation to collaboration, as I mentioned last recording, or in the recording for the overview of for the year, the new astrological year. It's going to bring something outward from within ourselves, and it's going to bring things out that have been hidden. Saturn is going to rework to restructure things to something that is things that are lasting and beautiful. Take note that November 20th through November 30th this year, Saturn is going to discharge 18 degrees of Capricorn, which, if you remember, Wise Owls, is the Sabian symbol of the Union Jack, flies from a new British warship. Will this be Brexit? Is Brexit in play? We are standing up with Pluto and Saturn as the era approaches. All right, so this is a sharing of wisdom. What do you think? Please post below. Um, what do you see in these cycle, these parts of the cycle, these three cycles that I've gone back through? Um, we can see the New World Order agenda coming to an apex. We all know that we're at the year of fairies dancing in the setting sun. That's the Sabian symbol for the entire year. Sunset, right? We are in the sunset. All right, I'm almost at an hour now. I look forward to what you have to say, and thanks for listening.